And so now, we will continue on Chapter 4, Behavioral Learning Theories. And this will be the last chapter that is included for your midterms. Finally, but again, this chapter has 5 subtopics that gives emphasis on behavioral learning theories. But it's fine, at least we're already halfway there in finishing all the topics that we need to discuss for your midterms. Okay, so lesson 1 or topic number 1, classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. Now, Ivan Pavlov is a Russian psychologist known for his famous experiment with the salivation of the dogs. Okay, and later on, ikakwento ko sa inyo kung ano yung nangyari doon sa kanyang experiment. Then, more likely, kapag sinabi kasi nating behavioral learning theories, this pertains on the stimulus and response, which is also included in classical conditioning. Now, again, a reminder, please be reminded that all these learning theories should be familiarized and mastered. Bakit? Kasi all throughout your Prof. Ed na mga subjects, these are integrated. Same as to the licensure examination. So please, please, please do master the different learning theories that we have in this course. Okay? So let's get started. Now let's watch the short video regarding classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov.
Hi, I'm Brian Collin, and today's episode is on Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning. If you're having trouble studying and tired of Quizlet, check out Learn My Test for free at www.learnmytest.com. The best way to study is taking practice tests, and Learn My Test helps you build college-level practice tests without writing a single question. So before we get started, I'm just going to review what a stimulus is. So stimulus is anything in your environment that's presented to a person or an animal, and the response is the animal or human's response or reaction to that stimulus. To understand Pavlov's theory, you need to know the following terms. The first is the unconditioned stimulus, US, conditioned response, UR, neutral stimulus, NS, conditioned stimulus, CS, and conditioned response, CR. The video will go over all of these so you know them well. First thing that Pavlov did was he presented a piece of meat to dogs, and of course, like most hungry dogs, they would salivate to the piece of meat or drool when they saw the piece of meat. The unconditioned stimulus in the previous case is the meat, because the meat produces a natural reaction from the dog by the dog salivating. So anything that something in your environment produces a reaction that's not a learned reaction, that's called an unconditioned stimulus. Remember that an unconditioned stimuli is something that you don't have to learn. So you don't have to learn to feel pain after you get pricked with a pin. You don't have to learn to get sick after being exposed to bacteria or a virus. Food, bacteria, viruses getting pricked are all examples of unconditioned stimuli. The reaction to an unconditioned stimulus is called the unconditioned response, or UR. For example, the UR for getting exposed to bacteria is getting sick, or the UR for getting pricked with a pin is feeling pain. Pavlov rang a bell in front of the dogs in his study. The dogs did not have a response to the ringing bell. The bell at this point is a neutral stimulus, or NS. A neutral stimulus, or NS, does not produce a response. If I see a tree outside and don't pay much attention to it, this would be a neutral stimulus, or NS. If I see a chair at a cafe and don't react much to it, that would also classify as a neutral stimulus. Pavlov presented the meat to the dog and rang the bell at the same time, so the dog would associate the sound of the bell with the meat and eventually salivate to the sound of the bell. Acquisition is the part when the unconditioned stimulus and the conditioned stimulus are presented together to produce the conditioned response. Acquisition is basically when the conditioned response is learned. Eventually, Pavlov took the meat away and just rang the bell by itself. The dog would salivate to only the sound of the bell. At this point, the bell is no longer the neutral stimulus because it produces a reaction from the dog. It is the conditioned stimulus, or CS. At this point, Pavlov has taught his dogs to salivate to the sound of a bell. The dog's salivation response to the bell, or the conditioned stimulus, is the conditioned response, or CR. So any response to a conditioned stimulus is a conditioned response, or CR. It makes sense that if you ring the bell and don't show the dog the meat, that the dog is going to stop associating the bell with the meat. And that's what extinction is. So extinction is when the conditioned response stops because the conditioned stimulus hasn't been presented with the unconditioned stimulus for a while. Let's say that you ring the bell enough times without the meat that the dog forgets to salivate to the bell 30 times in a row. But let's say the 31st time the dog salivates to the bell. This is what's called spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery is when the conditioned stimulus produces the conditioned response after the conditioned response has stopped. So let's break classical conditioning down using an example. Let's say you ate a cheeseburger with bacteria in it, and the bacteria in the cheeseburger made you sick, and then you were no longer wanted to eat cheeseburgers again because you associated the bacteria in the cheeseburger with all cheeseburgers. So in this example, the bacteria in the cheeseburger is what's causing you to get sick, and the unconditioned response is you getting sick to the bacteria in the cheeseburger. The unconditioned stimulus is the bacteria. The unconditioned response is you getting sick from the bacteria. Now, not all cheeseburgers you eat make you sick, but since you associated the cheeseburger or the conditioned stimulus with the bacteria, the unconditioned stimulus, and getting sick, the unconditioned response, now the cheeseburger, the conditioned stimulus, produces a sick feeling or conditioned response. Hi, my name's Brian Collin. I'm a psychology instructor and I have a PhD.
Okay, so again, diba, from the video presentation, when we say stimulus, no, it is anything from our environment that causes us to react. Nakuha? Okay? Say for example, may dumaang butterfly. Then yung reaction mo, na-amaze ka. So yung stimulus is more likely the butterfly, and response, of course, is our reaction to the stimulus. Yung na-amaze ka nung nakita mo yung butterfly, that was your response. Nakuha? Okay, so we also have here terms na kailangan nating maintindihan as we go along with the discussion. Kapag sinabing unconditioned stimulus, no, ito ay yung stimulus na nagte-trigger ng natural na reaction. So dito, doon sa video presentation na ipinakita sa atin, initially, yung meat, siya yung unconditioned stimulus. Bakit? Kasi once na yung dog nakakakitahiyahin meat, automatically, natural response niya, no? Which is the unconditioned response is yung kanyang paglalaway or nagsasalivate siya. Nakuha? Yung automatic na response or natural response is what we call the unconditioned response. Now, yung sinasabi namang neutral stimulus is anything in our surrounding that do not causes us to react. Nakuha? So, neutral stimulus. Now, conditioned stimulus is the bell. Okay? Kasi, ito na ngayon yung in-associate natin doon sa unconditioned stimulus. Nakuha? So, more likely, nung yung nag-ring na siya ng bell, nakuha? Pag ring niya ng bell, more likely, ano nangyari? Ipinartner niya yung pag-ring ng bell sa meat, pinresent niya yun pareho doon sa dog. Nakuha? So, yung unconditioned stimulus, yung meat, isinabay niya doon sa bell. Okay? Kaya each time, di ba yung response, natural or unconditioned response ng dog kapag nagpe-present siya ng meat is naglalaway or nagsasalivate. Ngayon, since pinagsasabay niya yung ring of the bell and presentation of the meat, ilang beses niya ginawa yon, after which dumating yung moment na kahit walang meat, bell na lang. Basta nag-ring siya ng bell, automatically, the dog salivates. And that is what you call the conditioned response. Yung response niya doon sa conditioned stimulus. Dahil nga, yung meat, in-associate niya na doon sa bell, kasi nga pinagsasabay yung presentation. So, more likely, kahit na i-remove yung meat, yung bell na lang, yung ipa-ring, automatically, the dog salivates. And that is the conditioned response. Nakukuha ba? Unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus na nagkukos ng natural, automatic na response. Yung unconditioned response naman, it is the natural occurring response doon sa unconditioned stimulus. Conditioned stimulus, ito na yung may association na siya. In-associate na natin yung meat and bell. Ngayon yung bell, yung nagiging conditioned stimulus. In-associate na siya. Then, conditioned response is yung response ng dog doon sa conditioned stimulus. Nakuha? Ngayon, ito, yung illustration. So, before conditioning, no? Kapag nakakita yung dog ng food, which is the unconditioned stimulus, yung response niya ay siya ay nagsasalivate or naglalaway agad, unconditioned response. Then, during conditioning, pinagsabay na yung bell and yung food. Okay, conditioning is the process of deconditioning, or ito yung meron ng unconditioned to conditioned stimulus, then unconditioned response to conditioned response. Okay? So, during conditioning, pinagsasabay yung bell at saka yung food. So, more likely, yung response pa ng dog ay unconditioned pa kasi nga may food pa na sinasama. Okay? Ngayon, after conditioning, kapag pinaparing na lang yung bell, automatically yung dog naglalaway or nagsasalivate siya. Kuha? So, that is classical conditioning. Okay. So, actually, si Ivan Pavlov is more on the study of the dogs. Ito kasing study niya, itong learning theory, no, itong classical conditioning is accidentally niya lang to na-discover. Bakit? Initially, he is a psychologist, Russian psychologist, who studies about the digestive system of the dogs. Okay, yun yung pinag-aaralan niya, yung digestive system ng dog. Pero, meron siyang na-notice na interesting doon sa behavior ng dog. Bakit? Kasi, yung dog, since naka-caged sila doon sa laboratory ni Ivan Pavlov, each time, no, na dumadating yung kanyang assistant na may dalang food for the dog, automatically, yung dog ay na-excite at nagsasalivate. Imagine ha, marinig pa lang ng dog yung footstep nung assistant niya, automatically yung dog nagsasalivate. Nakuha? Sabi pa nga dito, with this team of researchers, Pavlov began studying this process in more detail. So, after nun, na-observe niya, no, yung footsteps ng kanyang assistant in-associate sa food. Kaya ngayon, yung conditioned response ng dogs, nagsasalivate sila. Kaya na-discover nila itong classical conditioning. He systematically controlled the onset of the sound and the timing of the delivery of the food, recorded the amount of the dog's salivation. Initially, the dogs salivated only when they saw or smelled the food. But after several pairings of the sound and the food, the dogs began to salivate. That is what you call classical conditioning. Okay? So, after he had demonstrated that learning could occur through association. Okay? Please do recall or or i-emphasize natin yung word na association. Pavlov moved on to study the variables that influence the strength and the persistence of conditioning. Okay? So, sabi dito, acquisition repeatedly but without presenting the food afterward. Acquisition, extension, and spontaneous recovery shows what happened. So, after the initial acquisition or learning, natutunan ng dogs na in-associate na nila yung meat doon sa bell, phase in which the conditioning occurred when the conditioned stimulus or yung bell was presented alone. Yun lang. The behavior rapidly deceased. So, extinction refers to the reduction and response that occurs when the conditioned stimulus is presented repeatedly without the unconditioned stimulus. So, ano nangyari? So, since natuto na yung dog na kapag pinaring yung bell, alam niya kasi automatically na merong food na dadating. Kaya, nagkakaroon siya ng conditioned response or nagsasalivate agad siya kahit na marinig niya lang yung ring ng bell. Pero, yung ginawa ni Ivan Pavlov, sige la siya paring. Paring lahan bell, paring laniya, paring, pero di rin siya nahatagin food. So, ngayon, yung dog, nag-decrease yung kanyang response of salivation or hindi, bagan isip niya na ba, ay, waray man food, sige kala pa bagting san bell, pero waray man food. So, an ear response, di rin na siya totally nagsasalivate or hindi na siya naglalaway. Reduction in responding that occurs when the conditioned stimulus is presented repeatedly without the unconditioned stimulus. Another example for extinction. Sigunta. Yung unconditioned stimulus is yung walis tingting. Pag pinalo mo, yung bata, yung kanyang unconditioned response is to behave. Or mamati siya sa imo. Ngayon, yung walis tingting, sinamahan mo siya ng word na isa. Nagka-count ka na. Ngayon, in-associate mo yung walis tingting at yung word or yung counting mo ng numbers. So, automatically, kapag narinig na nila na nagsasabi ka ng isa, dalawa, or nag-ihap ka na ba, marinig pa lang nila yon, yung conditioned response will be mag-behave na hira. Nakuha? Ngayon, pag sige ka nila siya nga, usa, diri ka matuod, tapos diri mo maliwat gintutuod, unstick, paglambaha more likely yung kanyang conditioned response decrease ko, or diri na siya matuod, kay diri naman ginlalamba ni mama. So, magsigi like ni ihap ito hiyapag, pinasaway. Nakuha? So, that is what you call extinction. Kapag sige ka nala pakitahan conditioned stimulus, nga diri ka upod an unconditioned stimulus, so nagde-decline or nagtikaubos an response, conditioned response, which is what we call the extinction. Okay? Now, spontaneous recovery is the sudden increase, ng kanyang conditioned response. So, say for example, sabi nga sa video, say ka man ring handbell, pero a sudden moment, nag-ring ka handbell, tas biglang nag-salivate ulit yung dog. So, that is spontaneous recovery. Hindi naman sa totally nakakalimutan niya na yung response. Kapag sige ka nila pabagting, alam niya pa rin naman yun, nga lang, nagde-decrease lang. Okay? Although at the end of the first extinction period, the conditioned stimulus was no longer producing salivation, the effects of conditioning had not entirely disappeared. Yun nga, kapag bisan ka pa sige ka pabagting, though nagde-decrease lang yung kanyang conditioned response o yung pagsasalivate, pero hindi naman talaga nawawala yung response niya doon sa pagbagtinghan bell. Okay? After a pause, okay, although sounding a tone again elicited salivation. So, diba, sige ka pa bell, katima siya liwat, waray na siya mag-salivate or nag-occur ng extinction. So, maghatag ka ganihin time na dire ka lang magpabagting. The following na parang nag-ulit ka ulit, nagpabagting, no? Sandbell, more likely nababalik an iya response. So that is what you call spontaneous recovery. Now, dun sa example na binigay natin, okay? So, dahil nga, yung pag nag-iihap ka usa, duha, katima, waray ang stick, an iya response, conditioned response, di rin na siya natuod haimo. Pero, hindi yun totally nawawala. Yung pag-behave niya, kada nag-iihap ka na. Okay, nandun pa rin yung response niya nga lang, nagde-decrease lang. Kasi yung mindset niya, ay, kaya hindi rin maging tutuod ni mama. So, okay lang magpinasaway ako. Ngayon, kapag there is a specific time na hindi mo yung ginagawa, tapos biglang nag-count ka ulit, nag-ihap ka otro usa, automatically, yung bata, nagre-response, conditioned response. So, that is what you call spontaneous recovery. Nakuha? Okay. Then, generalization. Now, this refers to the tendency to respond to stimuli that resemble the original conditioned stimulus. Now, say for example, generalization happens when, di ba, yung bell nga, sabihin natin kapag yung dog, naririnig yung bell, siya ay nagsasalivate kasi alam niyang merong food na darating. Di ba? Kapag nakarinig siya ng similar na sound, sabihin natin yung ringtone mo, is just like of that a ring of the bell. So, automatically, siya ay nagsasalivate. Bakit? Kasi yung ringtone is similar to the sound of the bell. So, that is what you call generalization. Nakuha? Okay. Next is discrimination. Kung sa generalization, ito ay yung tendency na mag-response yung dog sa similar na sound, katulad na or kaparehong sound ng ring of the bell, siya ay nagsasalivate. Kahit hindi naman bell yung pinapatunog, pero since katunog siya ng bell, yung ringtone, okay? So, ang nangyayari ngayon, siya ay nagsasalivate. Yung discrimination naman, ito ay yung alam niya na kahit pa yung ringtone ay kapareho ng sound ng bell, hindi siya nagsasalivate. Bakit? Alam niya yung difference noong sa totoong bell at saka yung sa ringtone na bell. So, is the tendency to respond differently to stimuli that are similar but not identical. Ibig sabihin, did to good lahi hapag ringhan bell, no? Nagre-response. Bakit? Alam niya na yung ringtone is not the bell itself. So, that is what you call discrimination. Nakuha? Dogs salivated when they heard the specific tone that had preceded food, but not upon hearing the similar tones that had never been associated with the food. So, since hindi naman yung ringtone yung inassociate sa food, so hindi talaga siya magsasalivate. Generalization, again, happens when yung similar na sound or similar na tone, no, narinig ng dog as to the ring of the bell, siya ay automatic na nagsasalivate kahit naman hindi yun talaga yung bell. So, that is generalization. Discrimination naman ay kapag alam niyang i-identify kung yun ba talaga yung bell at hindi. Nakuha? Okay. Okay, so that's the end of classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. Nakuha? Sige, mag-cite pa tayo ng ibang example. Okay, say for example, initially, nag-present ka sa mga estudyante, elementary students, ng lollipop. Okay? Ngayon, nagdi-discuss ka, nag-activity kayo, pag present mo yung lollipop sa mga estudyante, which is your unconditioned stimulus, yung unconditioned response nila will be what? They will participate. Bakit? Kasi alam nilang may lollipop. Nakuha? Ngayon, the following na activities ninyo sa classroom. Yung lollipop, in-associate mo sa star. Okay? Printed na star. Ngayon, each time na i-present mo yung star, yung lollipop, siya ay associated sa star. So, nandoon na nangyayari ngayon yung conditioning. Yung kanila namang magiging conditioned response is that kapag ni-remove mo yung lollipop, yung star na lang muna yung pinapakita mo, automatically yung mga learners mo ay nagre-recite pa rin. Bakit? Kasi nga yung star is in-associate mo na siya doon sa lollipop. Nakuha? Ngayon, the previous na naman, the other day, nag-recitation kayo or group activity, pinakita mo yung star, bigyan mo silang star, pero walang lollipop na binibigay. So, more likely, nagde-decrease yung kanilang behavior to participate in the class, pero it doesn't mean na hindi na sila mag-recite. So, pagkatapos ng ilang time, na hindi ka nag-present ng star, the next time na mag-present ka ulit ng star, nandoon nangyayari yung spontaneous recovery wherein sila ay nagre-recite ulit. Kasi, parang hopeful sila na baka this time, with the star, bibigyan ako ni ma'am ng lollipop. Ngayon, in generalization naman, sabihin natin na magbibigay ka sa kanila ng sticker na butterfly. Okay? Tapos, since dinikita mo sila dito ng sticker na butterfly, nag-response pa rin sila, nag-recite sila. Bakit? Kasi alam nila na yung binigay mo na sticker na butterfly will correspond into a reward. Nakuha? So, that is generalization. Ngayon, discrimination naman happens when nakita nila yung sticker na butterfly, pero hindi sila nag-recite kasi isip nila, hindi naman yun yung star eh. Baka hindi ako bigyan ni ma'am ng lollipop kasi yung star lang yung naging dahilan para bigyan ako ni ma'am ng lollipop. Kahit bigyan ako ni teacher ng butterfly na sticker, pero kung hindi naman yun magko-correspond sa lollipop, hindi na lang ako mag-recite. Kuha? So, that is discrimination. So, actually, nai-apply naman natin siya sa everyday living natin, yung classical conditioning. Hindi lang natin na-observe. Nakuha? So, again, if you have questions or clarifications regarding sa classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov, you may raise your question through our group chat. But before that, let us first visit your module. Okay, here. So, classical conditioning. So, again ha, do not simply rely on this video, but rather, please read your module. Kasi, baka may mga information na hindi natin na-discuss through this video, which is included in your module. So, much better na rin na nagbabasa kayo. Okay, so for the activity, still, you are to make a graphic organizer for engage. Then, i-paraphrase ninyo and discuss kung ano yung experiment na ginawa ni Ivan Pavlov. Diba? Diniscuss naman natin kanina through this video kung ano yung experiment niya. Okay? Then, what happens during extension? How does extension relate to spontaneous recovery? So, didiscuss yun. Then, magbigay kayo ng example ng stimulus generalization and discrimination. Then, you differentiate the two, generalization and discrimination. And last, okay, so, you analyze the given problem here. Then, you are to discuss. Then, 5 examples of how you have been classically conditioned. So, read, then analyze, then answer. Then, to express, of course, you are to make reflections with the questions provided. So, basahin mabuti. And please be guided with the learning rubric. So, this, again, with the help of the learning rubric, you will be graded through this. So, be guided with the learning rubric. So, that is all for classical conditioning. Next video for the second topic under behavioral learning theories.